This is Kenyatta, and I would like to share with you about the resilience zone. So this concept comes from the community resiliency model created by Elaine Miller-Karas and developed by the Trauma Resource Institute. The material, the content is copyrighted by the Trauma Resource Institute, so restrictions apply in reusing of this information. So let's begin. What is the resilient zone? The resilient zone is the okay zone. It's a state of well-being in mind, body, and spirit. It is our window of tolerance. And in this slide, you see the gray line shows the boundary of the resilient zone. It is the optimal window of tolerance. It shows how much movement can be made in one's nervous system and still feeling okay. It represents the capacity of the nervous system. So when in the resilient zone, one is able to experience a wide range of emotions. One is also able to maintain their executive function, ability to think clearly. One is able to make sound decisions for themselves, their families, and their communities. Simply put, when one is in the resilient zone, they can think and feel at the same time. Within this zone of tolerance, the white line depicts our inner experience or movement of our nervous system as life happens. So when we're within this optimal window of arousal, at the top end, hyperarousal or activation of the sympathetic system, we experience excitement and mobilization. When we're within the optimal window of arousal at the bottom end, hypoarousal or activation of the parasympathetic system, we experience calm, safety, connection. This line shows a dynamic flow of our nervous system between highs and lows. That means we can manage stress and challenges that comes about during our day and still be in our best self in mind, body, and spirit. So there can be times of the day with more stress, and other times of the day with less stress. Overall, our goal is always to widen this zone so our nervous system can have greater movement. So this is nice, but the reality is many of us are not living with this dynamic, smooth flow in our nervous system. And we'll get to that in a moment. So even though there is a nice dynamic flow, I'd like to note that okay zone does not equal happy all the time. So we still experience a range of human emotions, so energy in motion. But the key is that we're okay as we experience these emotions. We don't have the need to get rid of them, bypass them, get around them, deny them, etc. We can move through them, going up in our zone or coming down, not resisting life. We may be sad, mad, or neutral and still be okay. So it is said that when we're in our resilient zone or okay zone, we are our best selves in good weather or bad weather. So we may be doing all fine, feeling okay in our zone, and a stressful event happens. It hits our nervous system like a lightning bolt, and we're bumped out of the okay zone. When this happens, we have gone beyond our capacity. We may go very high and then come crashing down, as shown by this jagged line. So this is a normal reaction of the human nervous system. We don't get to control this. This movement in our nervous system is called a dysregulated nervous system. Again, we are beyond our capacity during these moments. We may get stuck in a high zone or low zone. When we're stuck in the high zone, hyperarousal, this is hyperarousal outside of our window of tolerance, the fight-flight system gets activated. That's the parasympathetic system. And we may have different behaviors. We may get irritable, anxious, panicky, hypervigilant. We're easily triggered when we're here. And when we're in hyperarousal, we may also exhibit the ambivalent attachment style. We may also experience separation anxiety or feel extra sensitive to rejection. When we're stuck in the low zone, hypoarousal, we'll have the activation of freeze or feign death. And this is part of the parasympathetic nervous system. We may experience avoidant attachment style. And in this hyperaroused state, we may feel depressed, self-critical, suicidal, numb, detached. We also may become passive or submissive, or take on the victim identity. And there also may be a disconnection from the body. Again, this is nervous system dysregulation. I'd like to emphasize that it is okay to get bumped out of our resilient zone. We're not trying not to get bumped out. So instead, we want to know when we are out, when we get bumped out, so we can come back in. And this, again, is a natural, normal human biological response to stress. It's not a weakness. Part of our humanity, our wiring, and biology rules. We did not do anything wrong, not defective. This is normal. So when this is happening in the nervous system, again, simply put, one cannot think and feel at the same time. And it may be difficult to absorb new information, process, integrate new materials, and even to articulate one's experience. So even though we're not trying not to get bumped out of our resilient zone, we want to be able to be aware when we're out so we can go back in, because getting stuck outside of this zone for a long time can bring on what some call disorder. Unfortunately, we're not born equally. Some are born with a narrow zone, shown by the top image, and some with a wider zone, shown in the bottom image. Remember, the goal is to widen the resilient zone, to grow our capacity so there can be greater movement, greater room in the nervous system, so we can withstand what life throws at us. And as Black and Brown folks, we don't have the luxury to get too comfortable in our practice. It sucks that we don't have this privilege, but the reality is that with the narrow zone, we become easily triggered, easily activated. And widening our resilient zone doesn't mean that we stop feeling or become immune to things. We still feel, and we feel deeply. The difference is that we have the capacity to feel what is there without becoming overwhelmed by it or getting bumped out of the resilient zone for long. Things can start to move through and not get trapped in the body. So we're less afraid of emotions and bodily sensations. So how do we widen this zone? Well, with simple practices, whether it be spiritual practices, wellness practices, practices such as being able to ground, resource internally, to be able to orient, to always seeing where you are, locating yourself. And in spiritual communities, to be able to come and show up as you are and allowing the collective energy to embrace you and carry you at times, especially in need. So the good news is, no matter where you are, we all have the power to change our resilient zone.